Do you get that, though? I mean, it says this was just a small pilot study. It showed that 67% of participants who had been depressed for 18 years on average and had been unresponsive to every other form of treatment. Is that good? Jesus wept.
Oh, that actually fucking hurt.
You gotta keep. Well, hey, welcome
back to another episode of Slightly Serious. I interrupted his
Did you inhale that?
I was trying to just do the slurping and it fucking inhaled. He was doing some last second cramming for the book quarter later, and I was being a dick and trying to interrupt him, and it fucking backfired.
Well, it's called karma.
But how's it going? Welcome back to Slightly Serious. That's Zane. I'm Zane. We're fucking here.
Hey.
Well, hell yeah. Now that I'm dying.
Do you need me to get you something?
No, okay? I got some water, bro.
Okay,
I'll be good.
Right. Good.
I'll drink it proper this time.
Good. So.
Turns out I'm not a fish. Can't breathe water. All right.
Is what it is.
But we were back. So the last episode you saw was actually slightly pre-recorded. We haven't been in a room together for almost 2 weeks.
It's the truth.
You went on a little shindiggle vacation.
A little hiatus. I went on a vacation, yeah.
Yeah, alligator hunting or some shit?
Did some alligator hunting. I was in South Carolina, Mount Pleasant.
Yeah. Wasn't actually alligator hunting, but
it was
South Carolina. Alligators are around. He wasn't there specifically to hunt the gators. So, Peter, please do not come after him.
No, we
weren't. I need a co-host. Thank you.
We were not hunting any real gators. I did, however, go to visit my dad.
Oh, yeah.
So, that was the thing. And it was a lot of fun, honestly. He was just a blast to be around. He's got a really, really nice property. He's spent an insane amount of his life. Insane's an unfair word. He spent a good portion of his life really trying to work hard to get nice things, and he sure has them. My God, he's got them. He's got some great things. Why are you making such brutal eye contact with me? It's like
I heard that I don't ever pay attention to you, so I'm fucking making sure.
Is that what it is? Is that
you ever had that where you're like choking on water, you get that pain, then
it hurt? It hurt.
Yeah, like where you like cough too much that like then your neck and like back of your head hurts.
Yeah,
that's what I had. So I'm also just suffering at the moment.
I thought you were trying to stare me down or something. No, I mean my dad's got a really nice property in South Carolina. It was really, really nice to go and spend time with him. And I guess my point is he spent a large portion of his life working hard to get it. And my God, he has got it. And it was really, really nice. But all of that would have been just shit had the experience not been awesome. Like, had it not been a good relationship with him or had it not been fun. And he was so attentive to my kids. He was
what was the last time you saw your dad?
Well, I mean, I see him occasionally, but he's back and forth from
there and up here.
There and here and everything like that. And so I don't spend a lot of time with him. But like that amount of time, I mean, 7 days with my dad and my stepmom, like that's 7 days.
Oh yeah,
straight with both my girls. And dude, I had to get both of those kids on a fucking plane.
Yeah,
by myself.
I can't get
through
myself
airport
on a plane
security
time,
on a plane, and it's a 2-year-old, and I got to get her to not pee herself or poop herself on the plane.
Thankfully, it's not too long of a flight for South Carolina.
It's like an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah, thankfully you weren't trying to go cross country.
That's true. That's true.
My mom used to have to ship my brother and I from Cali to Ohio when we were little. Like, she wouldn't fly with us. She would get us to the plane, and then my grandparents would be waiting when we got off the plane. But for the flight, we were just unsupervised.
Wow.
And like,
how old are you?
We moved from Cali when I was 7. So
can you be unsupervised on a plane under the age of 18?
Apparently, because we fucking did it.
I mean, maybe back in the day. I don't know what the rules are.
This was definitely pre 2011.
I don't know what
9/11. So
yeah.
But no, yeah. I mean, we moved from Cali when I was 7, so I was under 7, and my brother's 5 years older than me.
And you had no adult with you on the plane.
We get
Yeah, that couldn't
they get
happen
us
now.
they'd get us to the plane, and then my grandparents would be when we got off. They'd be standing there. But
Well,
like,
that was back in the day when you were allowed to walk up to the gate, as far as the gate with your loved ones and say goodbye to them as they're getting on the plane. Now you can't even go through airport security. You're walking them to the front of the airport, and that's it. That's as far as you fucking go.
Yeah, no,
You don't go
This was
in
definitely this was before, they tightened down security on that kind of stuff. But no, I remember doing that shit. And like I said, my brother was 5 years older than me. So even when I was like, I think I was probably my oldest. We did it. I was probably 6, and so he's only 11, 12.
Oh shit!
And we're flying across the country
I
to
don't
play.
think, I don't think that could happen now.
Oh, definitely not. Especially with you said the security shit. That wouldn't
But
happen.
dude, it could not have gone easier. I guess is like the point I'm trying to make. Like this was the best vacation. Like there was zero stress. I mean, with a 7-year-old and a
Last
2.5-year-old.
time I did South Carolina for any sort of trip, I drove it.
You
And
drove the whole way.
it was a nightmare because it was
That's
a
what my
wedding.
dad does.
It was with my ex, and we were going to a wedding in her family, and we had 2 cars with everybody like going crammed into these 2 vehicles, and the one vehicle wasn't that great. It was like a minivan, and she'd never driven it like fully loaded on the mountains, so she thought her car was dying because it was like struggling up hills.
Oh wow.
So we had to like stop because she's like, my car's breaking. We're not gonna make it. I'm like, no, your car just isn't meant to be fully loaded going up the mountains down here.
I'm
But it was
telling
like
you,
a 10
some of
hour,
those
it was
hills,
a 10-hour drive.
Dude, I remember driving through like Oregon and trying to go up hills in there, and there's like no guardrail. Like you're driving and there's 0 guardrail as you're going up, and it's so steep. I mean, you're talking like 65, 80, 70, 80% grade. And you're like, how am I even driving on this without dying?
Yeah, we get in the
Like,
mountains. Some of those hills are crazy. But yeah, no, I mean, it was South Carolina was pretty last time I went down there. I've driven through it a bunch when I was doing trucking too. But as far as a trip, I went to
Driving sucks though.
There was a
right?
lake
'Cause it's
down
like
there
2
that we went
lanes.
by.
If you go from Ohio to South Carolina, at one point there's like 2 lanes, and
I mean,
it's not.
I've
not
driven
a pretty
a lot
highway
of pretty
drive.
shitty places with a truck. So
Yeah, you do spend a lot of time driving.
yeah, but no, South Carolina was pretty. So I don't remember what the lake was that we were on because it was like lakeside is what the wedding was. I don't remember the name of the lake, but it was pretty. It was really pretty down there.
It's gorgeous.
It's a little too close to the coast for my comfort with hurricanes, but still pretty. When it's nice out.
Fortunately, I mean, I called him.
Was the weather nice though? Like
Dude,
overall?
I thought it was going to be a trash going down there because I was looking at the weather and I'm like, oh my god, it looks like they're
You
getting
guys-
hit.
they got hit, like,
It's
right-
beautiful,
before you went, so you probably got there after the like storm went
and it
through.
cooled down and it started. I mean, it was still hot. Don't get me wrong. There was like days where it was 90s, but
Yeah, but
and
you
the
got
humidity
it right
nice,
after
but-
the storm though, so at least you dodged that.
And we
Timing-wise.
we did have one day of rain. We were dancing in the rain, my kid and I. It was
I remember
fun.
you messaged me or talked to me about it or something. That you guys were out like dancing in it.
We were dancing in the rain. It was adorable.
Well, hell yeah, man! I'm glad you
So
got to
much
do
fun.
that.
Great trip. Just great trip. Could
yeah.
not
I'll be taking.
have a better vacation if I
I'm
wanted to.
taking time off work, but I'm not really going anywhere. We're just kind of doing stuff around here, kind of just finding activities in the area to do on my 2 weeks for my birthday next month.
That's right. Your birthday's coming.
The big
up.
30.
What's the date, Zane?
September 27th.
Oh yeah, you better send him gifts. Send him the best stuff. He loves dildos.
I actually am trying to get a bigger collection than Moist Critical. If you understand that reference, you probably have an internet problem like I do. There's a YouTuber who jokingly tried to have the largest dildo as like his like crown thing, and he called it he called it Moby Dick, and it was like a giant 6 foot tall white dildo that he just had in the background of his videos for a while.
Wow.
And then they took it and modified it into like a go-kart that you could sit in. So it was just a giant 6 foot like frame of under a go-kart frame that you could drive around.
It's just a cock.
Yeah, just a giant 6 foot large dick that you could drive.
Yeah. Very nice. It's
Shit you do when you have too much money and you're like, we need content. How can we get it? Buy a
only there were
giant dick.
better things.
Buy a giant dick, put wheels on that bitch.
If only there was something better we could do with our days.
But no, I mean,
Some other
so I'm
form
looking
of
forward to that.
contribution.
Other than that, the weather's it's mild right now. This is like the perfect temperature for me. This like mid 60s is like what I live for, which is crazy because it was like 90 down in where I was delivering stuff the past couple of days, And now we're up here and it's like 60. It's like, bro, why can't it just beat this temperature always? Year round, I'd love it. Everyone's like, what about swimming? It's not warm enough to swim.
I
I'm like,
know. I
get
don't
a heated
know.
swimming pool, bitch. I don't know.
What you say, everyone says. I love 60. I take 60, 70 degrees all day, every day.
I'd love it.
You got to have the change. I love the change of the seasons, man. If it's always the same thing, always. I don't
The
know.
weather itself, like it can rain some days, it can be cloudy some days. I don't want it to get 90s and fucking humid or
No, I don't. It's not fun.
I don't like snowfall. Like, that shit fucking, I hate it.
But it's good to have a good 80-degree day every once in a while.
I mean, 80 is fine as long as the humidity is not
you know,
fucking
a good 77-degree
90.
day is nice every once in a while. And I would even take a nice brisk 40 degrees.
And like
sometimes.
80 isn't bad if you don't have to work outside. As soon as it starts getting like above 80 and humid and you have to work outside, that shit fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind 80 if I'm like playing some sports or going swimming or some shit. Then like, you can get 80, 90 because I'm like cooling off, having fun. But if I have to spend 10 hours outside,
what if you work
90,
in a deep freezer all day?
I still don't want 90.
No.
I still want like 60 because you're going from freeze. At 60 is gonna feel like a fucking oven to you at that point. I know because we have a negative.
What
5
if your
freezer.
job is to rub ice cubes on your nipples while you walk around outside?
I want to know where you applied for this.
I'm not saying this is my profession. I'm just saying, Zane, if your job is to walk around all day with ice cubes on your nipples and you have to be outside while you do it, would you not say that 90-degree weather would be the ideal living condition for such a thing?
I'm not sure. I honestly think colder would be better because it'd be less drastic and painful to your nipples if you're already used to the cold, right?
You're
if
not
it's already
wrong.
freezing outside, then you get ice and put it on your nipples. They're already frozen.
And when you mix something
If it's
that
90
hot with that
and
cold,
you're so hot, you're
what's
warm
the
and-
shatter effect, you know?
I mean, you might lose a nipple. You don't know. There might be permanent
Does it
nerve
stick
damage
now,
to your nipples.
If it's that hot outside and you stick your tongue to something like that, does your tongue stick to it the same way as if it was cold outside? And
Probably
you stuck your tongue
not.
to
It's
it?
probably just gonna melt.
It immediately melts.
Yeah, because like your body heat is gonna be so high that like that heat's gonna just melt that ice so fast.
Now, when you take something that's incredibly hot off the stove and you immediately put it under cold water, like glass, and it can shatter,
Yeah.
would the same thing occur
it might
to
happen to
your
your
areola?
nipples. It might happen to your nipple.
You would say you'd have shatter areola.
you
effect.
might shatter the nerves, and like you might not be able to feel your nerves anymore.
The more you know.
We Mythbusters, get on it.
The more you know.
Mythbusters, test
This
it.
is why we're here.
Adam Savage called you out. Test if your nipples explode if you quick freeze them.
Get on the motherfucking lines.
What the fuck is wrong with us, bro?
So much.
We're out here talking about exploding nipples. This channel's off the rails sometimes.
We never quite know what's going on.
Off the fucking chisel. The fucking Shazam.
So I went on vacation. What the fuck did you do?
It worked. And then I did some babysitting. We put a video up on our other channel. Did some shit like that. Other than that, didn't do a whole lot. Not too much crazy going on. Last weekend, I did it was like a community corn roast. So it was like 100-something people got together.
And all roasted corn together?
Well, they do an outside like grill where they have like corn straight from the fields. They grill it.
Who is that?
Everybody, it's the community.
Whoever
thing.
shows up.
Well, it's this one family that hosts it every
What
year.
field is the field that
They have a property, and then they just buy the corn from a local, like a lot of farmers in that area. But every year, it's the 45th year they've done it, where this one family hosts it and just invites like 100, 200 people, and everybody like you're asked to bring a dish, like when you come, and they just have like a buffet line set up, and you just add your dish to it, and then everyone goes up and just gets food all night, and there's like fucking hundreds of ears of corn as well.
And do you have to contribute, or you can just go to this thing and eat?
You can just go, but they ask that you bring like your own chair and your own like a dish and your own drink and stuff. But then like the corn's provided. There's games. There's a fire. There's music. The host usually has like alcohol and stuff. Like they do like Jello shots.
Where is this at?
It's out where I used to grow up, out like toward Youngstown.
You're going to it?
I went to it last week.
Oh,
Yeah. My girlfriend and I went. It
how was it?
was fun. We got there
did you
right
get
at the
fucked up?
beginning. I don't drink.
That's right. You don't.
No.
Did
she
she get
had some?
trashed?
No, she had a couple margaritas, but we just kind of hung out.
Who made the margaritas?
We got canned ones on the way.
No.
But we just hung out,
Had
had
a
some
big
good
fire?
food. They did like the egg toss at the beginning, like a game.
What are you doing with an egg?
It's just you toss it and then you just get further and further away, and the last team standing wins.
Toss it to each other?
Yeah, and then get further and
You
further.
got to keep catching the
yeah,
egg
and if you
without
drop
cracking?
it, you're out.
And then you have to kind of bend
We
down with it, so
I'm not to brag, but we won that shit.
You won the whole thing?
We fucking won that egg toss because we're fucking better.
What was your secret? Did you kind of cup it?
Well, you cupped it when you could.
You cup it and cradle, and you kind of come back with it?
Her softball background kicked in a little bit, and when we got too close, she would like softball pitch it, and it was like a line drive. So I had to like kind of catch it sidearms.
Yeah, but then you come into it, right? You come into the...
Yeah, but we ended up winning that. It was pretty cool. We got our ass beat in the cabbage roll, which if you've ever done a cabbage roll, it's fun, but it's hilarious.
What's a cabbage roll?
They just like paint out like lanes, and they have a big head of cabbage, and you get a broom, and you have like 5 people on your team, and it's a relay race.
Like curling?
Yeah, but you have to push the cabbage with your broom.
Push the cabbage
to the end. You turn around, push it back, and you switch out. And you have 5 people that have to go up and down.
And if it comes out of the lane,
you got to just get it back into your lane.
Skirt it back.
But the problem is the brooms usually break.
The broom would break.
Like the handle, because the cabbages are pretty heavy. Like
you're not using a good broom.
Well, Zane. You're not supposed to go get like heavy duty ones. You're supposed to get like somewhat cheap ones.
What, like a dustbin?
Because part of the fun of the game is the fact that then
what kind of broom are we talking? What do these brooms look like?
Just like a normal sweeping broom.
Just a normal trash broom.
Yeah. So like you're pushing, and it's like a head of cabbage, which get pretty heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And they're
how big is it? How big is cabbage, bro?
I mean, they're pretty big.
2 pounds max, if
but,
that.
I mean, a 2 pound.
1
trying
pound?
to push it with a flimsy aluminum like broom.
True.
And then sometimes you're trying to hurry, so sometimes it hits the ground and then it snaps the rod. So now you're like holding a broken broom trying to fucking do it.
What end would you use? Would you do the stick end or would you do
we started with the broom end and then it broke. So then people just started like stabbing the stick into it to push the fucking thing by the end. But by the time like everybody's brooms are in shambles, you're all trying to hold your broom together to finish off the race.
Wow.
And then like everyone's already like half people were pregame, so they're like half drunk too.
Were you at the end of that one?
I was in the middle. It broke during my turn. The first like initial break, and then just went downhill from there.
That's why Zane stays sober, is so he can win at the majority of these games and take advantage of the people who are slightly.
I got my ass beat in cabbage roll. Okay, egg toss though. I was sober. She had already had a drink or two. I think she had one. I don't know, but
they both had the sturdy hands to pull off.
It was also the beginning of it, so no one had really drank at that point. Like this was like right at the beginning. Like they had even
for the pre-gamers, like you said.
Yeah, but they hadn't even served the food yet. So, but it was a good time. We won like a bag of like candy and shit, which we ate some of it, gave the rest of it to a kid.
You didn't save any for your friend Nick?
No.
Wow.
No. Didn't. You were bragging about being in South Carolina, enjoying the weather, so I was kind of pissed at you.
It was really, really nice. I was really enjoying myself.
Yeah, but
it's cool, man. You know, all the houses are built on stilts in the area we were at.
I saw that when I was in Louisiana, back when I went down to visit around New Orleans. A lot of houses are built like that for flooding and purposes and hurricanes and shit.
It just makes them look so much more prestigious.
Well, they're either prestigious,
like, wow,
but also
so
they look
high. Third floor.
They
three
look
floors
like
up.
prestigious, but also flimsy. Like, they look prestigious, but also I feel like if I kick this post hard enough, your whole house is coming down.
Well, I don't mean stilts like that.
Well, I mean some of the houses
it's like
they
a full foundation. Yeah, it's like just the first floor is like.
It's like sometimes like if they do an extension or something, like it's just like a 4x4 that goes up.
Oh yeah, you've seen that. Yeah,
and I'm like, I feel like I could just kick this post and half your house falls down.
Yeah.
Granted, you're not, and it's also
that's like what you would expect to see on the hills of like Beverly Hills. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's like I feel like if I kick this hard enough,
you're
I'm
not
fucking
wrong.
your whole shit.
I mean,
up.
you're not wrong. Some of that.
I'm checking my phone because I have a delivery. I'm hoping gets here.
I'm really hoping it gets
by
here
a certain
in time
point
too.
in this, but I haven't. But outside of that, doing a lot of listening to books and trying to watch occasional movies here and there. But
what did you watch?
We started watching Chaos the other day. It's a
which
movie.
You said it has something to do with chaos theory.
Yeah, it's based around the idea of the chaos theory, but it's like a bank heist movie. Jason
For those
Statham,
who aren't
Wesley
familiar
Snipes.
with chaos theory, Zane, enlighten them.
The basic concept of it, I don't know like the deep ends of it, but the basic concept of it is it's the idea that anything, no matter how chaotic it is, over a large enough period, like a large enough sample, there is a mathematical pattern to it. There is, in some way, shape, or form, a numerical pattern that you can assign to it. Just depends on how big of a sample size you need of the supposedly random seeming. That's the idea of the chaos theory, is where there's even in chaos there is order, type of a deal. But this the movie is a bank heist movie based around that idea. It's pretty interesting. So Jason Statham, main character, Wesley Snipes, the bad guy. Some pretty good actors. 2005 era. So they were just kind of getting away with doing some nonsense. It was a good time. But reading books and speaking of books and shit, I see a fucking pile. So I guess we're gonna get ready for that. Alrighty, we are here.
Into the book corner. Yeah.
So I'm. This is just what you read. Those are what you're going to read.
Bruh, you're looking over there.
There's a pile this big also on the side table, which I expected all of them to be piled when I came back in the room. I went and checked to see if my package got here. I expected there to be a much bigger stack.
So here's what I'll start with. This is what I finished, Zane. Do you remember when I was reading Ritual?
Yeah.
Do you remember what I said about it?
Like a couple weeks.
This is called Ritual, and it is by Damien Eccles and Lori Davis. What did I say about this originally while I was reading it?
That you thought it was pile. I'm just kidding.
I said it was the most trivial of the books in which I was reading at the moment. It felt like the information that I was receiving, and I had only been through. This is
You were all like
an essential grimoire. Okay? I have found it to be so. I have started to carry this book around with me and refer to some of the rituals, spells, meditations, prayers, whatever you want to call them. You look at me like I'm crazy, bro. Okay, so people will go, I'm going to sit down and pray, right? Or I'm going to sit down and meditate.
This
or
motherfucker's going to be on a corner in fucking downtown Cleveland. Listen, the ritual for purification. There's a fucking dirty old homeless dude screaming random shit at people.
This is nothing. I think that we assign a lot of words to things. And I think you can say prayer. I think you can say meditation. I think you can say spell. I think you can say ritual. I think you can say a lot of different things. However,
I think there's a difference between all of it, but go ahead.
However, there are a lot of different things in here that have become incredibly powerful and useful. And I have recognized that they're very, very fucking real as I've continued to do them over certain periods of time. And I will allow you to figure out for yourself what you feel like might be superfluous or what you feel might be...
Man's got one of them big words of the day calendars at home. Superfluous.
I really think there's some benefit to this book. It is called Ritual by Damien Eccles and Lori Davis. Again, it's an essential grimoire. If you know, you know. If you don't, look it the fuck up. That I finished. Now, I started... Do you remember what I was reading about Buddhism before? It was The Elements of Buddhism by John Snelling. This is the essence of Buddhism by someone whose name I do not feel comfortable pronouncing. Zane, would you like to attempt it?
P. Lakshmi Narasu.
As good as anyone.
Lakshmi would be Lakshmi.
On the back, it says, as this is a Dhamma text, we request that it be treated with respect. If you are finished with it, please pass it on to others or offer it to a monastery, school, or public library. Thanks for your cooperation. Namo Amitabha. So.
What's that mean?
Namo Amitabha is something that would be ritualistically said and translates to something. Well, it's numerous of the light, or it's basically in honor of the Amitabha Buddha. So
homage to the Buddha, or I seek refuge in the Buddha.
Yes, it's a Sanskrit phrase, but directly translates to.
I just wanted to fact check them just to fuck up with them.
No, I've been reading.
Reading comprehension is the issue.
Of what I've learned about Buddhism so far, there's a couple things that stand out. One, there is little to no dogma, whereas most other religions have quite a lot. And this one is consistently adapting with the times and place.
What's it say about my KD in Call of Duty?
I don't know what that is.
My kill death ratio, man. It's adapting to the times. It needs to keep up with my game lingo.
Does it need to do that? This is just a different book on it.
Is it the same idea though? Just kind of breaking down Buddhism to its like basic pieces, basic ideals, I guess, for getting into Buddhism.
Slightly more in depth than the other one. If that one was the elements of it, and then this one was the essence of it, I don't quite know how else to put it. Let's just say it goes slightly more in depth, and it's written by somebody who is clearly of.
Man, stereotyping based off a name.
Well, no, but this is a Dhamma text. So, you know what I mean? Like, whereas the other one wasn't. The other one was something that you would buy. This one is reprinted and donated for free distribution. So it's pretty much
the elements of Buddhism, but from...
An educational foundation.
From the inside of Buddhism instead of an outsider who came and studied it.
Printed in Taiwan in 1999 of September, 37,500 copies. So it's like... a corporate body of the Buddha Educational Foundation. So that's pretty more in depth than something that's just like purchased.
It seems like it's the same idea, but coming from an internal source.
I don't like to speak too much on things like this. I just say from I start to become careful of my words when I start to talk about things I feel like I'm not capable of properly discussing. So with both of these books, I'm going to ask that if you have more interest in them, you check them out for yourselves. And, this is the essence of Buddhism. At all times, be respectful, for sure. The other things I have been reading are... I checked these out from the library. These next three were library checkouts. Almost all the books, every single book so far, Zane, that we've talked about, aside from the 12 Rules for Life, I have owned. These are from the library, and I checked them out specifically because of my interest in psychedelic medicine, specifically psilocybin, the compound found in mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, specifically something like Melmac or penis envy, which if you are not familiar with might sound silly, but it is quite real. This is called Psychedelic Medicine, The Healing Powers of LSD, MDMA, Psilocybin, and Ayahuasca by Dr. Richard Lewis Miller. I did not read this entire thing.
Ayahuasca.
I did not read the whole thing.
That's the shit Aaron Rodgers said he went on. He went on a silent retreat.
Yeah.
A silent ayahuasca retreat.
Ayahuasca.
And now everyone laughs at him.
Why?
Because he skipped because he's a professional football player. He's supposed to be at these mandatory camps. Mm-hmm. And he skipped an entire set of these mandatory camps that he's supposed to be being paid to be at to go on a darkness retreat and do ayahuasca instead. Everyone's like, what the fuck are you doing?
I love it.
Get out here and play football, motherfucker.
I only read from page 134 to 160 something, 70 something like that. 166 basically. So 134 to 166, about 30 pages on the psilocybin chapter, which provided me a lot of insight on psilocybin, specifically different research that it's been used on. For instance, psilocybin has been studied not aggressively, but to a more substantial effect nowadays than it was in the past, but for numerous things. And one of those things it has been used as is a means of alleviating fear of death, bringing out a more spiritual experience in the dying regarding cancer patients, terminally ill cancer patients who know they are dying, know they're going to die from this, and reducing the fear and turning it into something that is a more spiritual and profound experience. And it also alleviates the need for pain medication in those patients, which is pretty wild as well. Oh, yeah. So it's also used for depression. It is found that these medications, SSRIs or whatever, certain inhibitors that we use for our brain are needed to be taken 365 days a year. These pharmaceutical companies can go, well, we're going to prescribe you these these certain types of medications. There's serotonin, something serotonin receptor indicators. It's SSRIs. And they give you these medications and
Selective serotonin
reuptake inhibitors. Yes, SSRIs. And by giving you these, you need to take them all the time in order for them to have an effect. And these pharmaceutical companies, they can make all this money on these medications because you have to take them all the time. Whereas we are starting to realize...
Heads up, it's things like Prozac, Zoloft, Lexapro, antidepressants and shit.
Yes, they need to be taken consistently in order to work. Things like this psychedelic compound and these psychedelic compounds that are found in things like mushrooms, psilocybin specifically in this case, within taking this, it lasts for such an extended period of time, whereas you might only need to take it 4 times a year to have the same effect. It reduced the effect. I mean, I can't even spit out these facts to you because I'd have to start reading this book again and going over all the different analytics. But basically what this has brought to my attention is that the psilocybin mushroom, which I myself have taken and afterward have received profound, what seemed to me spiritual and psychological effects from taking this mushroom. I took, at my highest dosage, 1.5 grams of this mushroom, and I am still to this day having effects that have made me a more spiritual, and I just feel like well-adjusted person. It makes me want to, I've started to meditate. I've started to really try to just be by myself more and find within myself. I've started to get into Buddhism. I've started to after having taken this, my whole mindset has started to change. And someone once described it to me like this. They were like, look, if your brain was like a sledding hill and you just kept going down the same path every single time, if you're on a sled and you go down a hill, you ever notice no matter what point at the top you start, you always keep going down the same path because the snow got packed down and you kept going over it. Well, it's like when you take this mushroom, apparently it's like a fresh snow being packed over to the point where you can start taking different paths finally. It adjusts a sense of openness in you. My empathy, dude, I was never empathetic before. It had gone out the window due to trauma, and my empathy started to come back. So I wanted to research these. And upon researching it, especially in this one, Blue Dreams, which is the science and the story of the drugs that changed our minds by Lauren Slater, who's also the author of Prozac Diary and Opening Skinner's Box.
A quick insight here. I just Googled psilocybin just to see how Google and stuff puts it through. Mm-hmm. The DEA just lists it as an illegal street drug and tells you all the negative shit about it. And if you look up the active drug part, what psilocybin gets metabolized into, just psilocin, yeah. It's just listed as a prohibited substance. So the government doesn't want you talking about this shit.
They don't.
So they're coming to get you. I'm gonna check again just because.
Go check in your thing.
So talking about your drugs.
This is another one. It's Blue Dreams, and again, I didn't read the whole thing. I just found the very specific part in here on psilocybin. But they talk. There's even a chapter called SSRIs: The Birth of Prozac, placebos, and then it goes into psilocybin 6, magic mushrooms, God's flesh, 241. This is amazing how much has started to be written on this. I've ordered more books on this. I've got some I just picked up here. I'm super excited about. That's another one that I read. Then, and you know what? Before I even get into this other one, which is called The Purloining of Prince Oleomargarine, let me first show you how excited I am about these. So this is my other stack that I just picked up from the library today, and I was not sure that they were all going to be here, but holy fuck, I'm excited. This is called Trip, Psychedelics, Alienation, and Change by Tao Lin.
I hate the cover.
The cover is kind of cool.
You don't like colors.
It is a lot going on, and for someone like you,
my
who's
ADHD and colorblindness, hate that cover.
Contents are all kinds of different things, but at 69, it hits psilocybin. That's the part I'm going to be interested in there for that one. This is called the Psilocybin Handbook for Women. How magic mushrooms, psychedelic therapy, and microdosing can benefit your mental, physical, and spiritual health. Man, I'm like all over the place today. But why for women? Right? Why for women? And of all of them, this is the one I am most excited about.
I feel like there's probably a bunch of like almost any topic you can probably just find a book where it's like such and such.
It even
women.
says why a book for women in the front of it. And I looked it up and I went right to it. And it's kind of cool what they say. It says, fun fact, women report more frequent use of some psychedelics than men. A not so fun fact, in the Global Drug Survey of 2020, women cited depression, anxiety, relationship issues, trauma, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, as their main reasons for using psychedelics. Additional reasons include other mental health disorders, grief, distress over medical conditions, and chronic pain. The truth is that more women report self-treating with some psychedelics than men. So she kind of just like target it towards that sort of thing.
I also feel like...
But this is going to be great.
Yeah.
It says...
It'll be insightful. Maybe you'll understand
what is psilocybin? What does it do? What's it like to use it? Is it safe? Can you overdose on it? Can you become addicted to it? Does it interact with medications? Who should not use it? Is it legal? How do you get it? I mean, there's all kinds.
So maybe this will take you one step closer to actually understanding women, man.
You think?
No,
I don't really want to at this point anymore.
You're fucked.
I've finally
It's
been...
an impossible thing to do. Women don't understand women.
I don't think humans understand humans in general. I think we're all working on it. I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it Chanterelle Dreams?
That's what I would say.
Chanterelle Dreams, Amanita Nightmares, the love, lore, and mystique of mushrooms.
This motherfucker's gone down the deep end, man.
I am down a rabbit hole. I'm really interested. And so I figured, you know what? If you don't know, rather than not know, educate yourself.
I feel like I should change our background to some crazy fucking trippy shit. But
Frontiers of Psychedelic Consciousness. Conversations with Albert Hoffman, Stanislav Grof, Rick Strassman, Jeremy Narby, Simon Posford, and others.
No idea who
by
any of
David
those are.
J. Brown. This looks really fun, too. Really excited for these. This is Psychedelics and Spirituality, the sacred use of LSD, psilocybin, and MDMA for human transformation. I am only interested in psilocybin.
we
LSD
are, posting our podcast
is
under
not something I am researching.
a different category now.
Lysergic acid, diethyltryptamine, aka ayahuasca. These are not things that I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about psilocybin. So any of these other things that are in this, I am more focused on the psilocybin aspect. Molecules that amaze us. Paul May, Simon Cotton. Again, going through these specifically for this. This is pictures too. It's got pictures that go.
It's like
along
a
with it.
textbook.
Yeah. This one I read. And this is the one, Zane. This is just...
So Mark Twain's involved, so...
Yeah, it's Mark Twain. So, do you remember I told you I went to Twain for 2? Did I talk about that on here?
I don't think you talked about it here, but I think you mentioned something to me in passing.
At Medina Library, they had this, and I guess they go all over the place, but it's this
I also
husband
think
and
you
wife.
had to like rush out of here the one day for...
Yeah.
I think you were here and you're like, I have to be somewhere.
Yeah, it was like this husband and wife, and it was called Twain by 2, and he's a Mark Twain enthusiast, scholar, historian, and he dresses up as Mark Twain, and my gosh, he does an amazing job, especially like his mannerisms. I mean, very Mark Twain, Kurt Vonnegut-esque. It was just amazing. He was so great, and he recited direct pieces from Mark Twain's works, whether he would go into being Huckleberry Finn, for an instance, or something. But that was his whole thing.
That
I went to at
sounds
the library.
really risky this day and age.
I loved it. And you're right. You're right. It can be.
Is he a black man?
No.
Real risky.
Well,
Was
he
he with
couldn't
Mark
have been
Twain
with
shit?
Mark Twain, yeah. But I know. But that wasn't really. Yeah. We never know what.
I'm not saying like Mark Twain didn't write good books and
It
stuff,
wasn't
but
that
for
he
someone
was-
to be just reciting it verbally nowadays, he's
it was
definitely-
different, and he
he's
played
definitely
Huck.
having to-
He played Huck.
He's definitely having to to pick what sentences he's saying.
Yes.
Carefully.
He had to choose his sentence. But this is called The Purloining of Prince Oleomargarine. Or Oleomargarine, or however you want to pronounce it. It is like a kid's book.
Crazy name.
Or you would think it was like a kid. It's in Philip Stead with illustrations by Aaron
It's not a kid's
Stead.
book.
So, in a hotel in Paris one evening in 1879, Mark Twain sat with his young daughters who begged their father for a story. Choosing a picture from a magazine to get started, Twain began telling them the tale of Johnny, a poor boy in possession of some magical seeds who finds himself on a quest to rescue a stolen prince. Right? Later, Twain would jot down some rough notes about the story, but the tale was left unfinished. Until now. Plucked from the Twain archives at the University of California, Berkeley, Twain's notes now form the foundation of a fairy tale picked up over a century later. With only Twain's fragmentary outline in a story that stops partway as his guide, author Philip Stead has written a tale that imagines what might have been if Twain had fully realized this work. Illuminated by Aaron Stead's graceful, humorous, and achingly poignant artwork, this is a story that reaches through time and brings us the debut children's picture book of America's most legendary writer, envisioned by two of today's most important names in children's history. What he did is it was like Mark Twain was sitting across from him. And so it starts out as if he's talking to him, and it says, a note from one of the authors. Hello, my name is Philip Stead, which, if said too fast or too enthusiastically, sounds a lot like Philip's dead, which I'm not. I am sure of it. Most likely you don't know me and you've never heard my name said too fast or otherwise. Chances are, though, you've heard of my friend, Mr. Mark Twain. He's the one who told me this story, and unlike me, he is dead. Or at least, I figure he is, because 3/4 ways into his delivery of the facts, he got up to fetch another cup of tea and vanished completely. Poof. I do hope he found that tea. And so it's like he was telling the story and then stopped telling it. Chapter 1, in which we are introduced to our luckless hero. It's got these pictures in it that are just gorgeous to look at. Like, they're so cool. I love it. And then it breaks up midway through. Another note from one of the authors. Because you did, I'm sure, take the time to read the author's note at the beginning of this book, you'll recall that this story is not my own. It was told to me by my friend, Mr. Mark Twain.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's super cool.
So he like took the notes and made it as if
made
Mark
it into a
was telling
story.
it directly,
Yeah.
And then just filled the blanks in.
Filled the blanks in, turned it into. It's so fun. I was cracking up reading it. It's so. I mean, Mark Twain was just witty and sardonic, so sarcastic, facetious, like however you want to say it. And Philip Stead does an amazing job of carrying that along with him. And the pictures in this just make for a fantastic tale. I would read this over and over again. I want to buy it. I want to go buy it. That's been fun. But you've been reading too.
I have been. So last week I talked about how I've been started a new series and I finished the first book. It's the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson.
The first one was like 1,000 some pages.
Yeah, they're all over 1,000 pages outside. They have a couple like novellas in the middle. They're smaller, but even those are a couple hundred pages. But Brandon Sanderson, if you're in the fantasy, like you understand like fantasy authors and stuff, he's a big name in it. This is his current project. I think he's releasing the final book in this December of 2024. So I'm trying to catch up in time to be able to read that, which shouldn't be a problem. But these books are huge. 1,000+ pages on physical copy, 40 to 50 plus hours of audio on audiobook, which is how I listen to them.
And you finished the second one?
I finished the second one. Also did, it was technically 2.5 is how it's listed if you like look up the series. But it's a novella in the middle. It's a
is it kind of
book.
like The Wind Through the Keyhole is in the Dark
how it has
Towers?
like the filler books in the middle? Yeah. It was just kind of like character development that would have happened outside of the pages, but he decided to make it a book so that it was captured on page somewhere.
Yeah.
Because it didn't really fit in the book itself, but I felt like how he described. So like the second book, I'll just start there. Continued on the stuff from the first book. A lot of character development stuff. The story just takes great. The story is outlined so beautifully, and how he progresses through it is fantastic.
Is it the same characters in it?
Same characters. All the books is all the same character. It's the same storyline. It just gets to certain like footnotes, and then like another major.
How
event
many
happens.
new characters would you say were added in the second one to the first one?
Only a handful.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only like
How many from the first one were taken out?
only a handful.
Really?
Yeah, and then it's just some characters.
Were there
like,
2 full handfuls from the get-go? Or
in
are
good
there more?
in good stories like this big, like if you a Game of Thrones fan, like characters die, new characters get in, put in, like things like that happen, but he writes it well, and I think the fact that he doesn't rush the story is fantastic. Like he lets the story take the time it needs to develop. So there's a lot of information, a lot of what some people might think is like unnecessary. I love. It's a lot of like fucking camera doing its fucking shit again.
Well, did it do a clicker?
It did a little clicker, man. It did a little clicky click.
It does that
But
sometimes.
but no, like he lets it take his time, and like a lot of things where people might be like may not have been super necessary. I like that it's like there's small character developments, conversations with characters that at the moment you're like, what does this mean? And then like later you're like, oh, that's why that was brought up, and it's just very, very well written, and a lot of like stuff that you can think on outside of the book, like lessons that can expand past the universe of his story. So I think is really cool too.
How do you know how old the author is who wrote the
I
book?
think he's in his 30s or 40s.
Younger guy, huh? Oh, wow. Yeah, he looks like he's probably 40s.
48. So I mean, not super old, but
Yeah.
old enough that he's been writing for a while. But no, I love his style and how he progresses character like development. So like the second book, the story continues smoothly, beautifully, great twists and things like that, and just great additions to the story, new lore, new backstory to things. As I said, this is a series where there's a lot of information. So like take your time if you go to read it. Take your time to read it slow, properly. Really think about chapters. Really think about conversations that you read. There's been many times where I've been listening to it where I'll rewind back and like re-listen to a conversation the characters had because I'm like, did I misunderstand something? Like, and then like a couple times through or later in the book, I'm like, oh, now it clicks.
What do you mean? What would be something
like,
that
it's
you
just
would
like-
have to go back?
Just like how they're like the whole conversation about a topic, like, and then you're like, you almost get confused because it's like a deep thinking conversation. Because like one of the characters is trying to be she's like studying under a philosopher to be like a philosopher herself.
Okay.
So they have a lot of very deep thinking conversations. And when it's like put through, like the first time you read it or listen to it, it seems like a lot. You're like, wait, what? But then like how he structures conversations, how he structures sentences in these conversations, and uses words in ways that us just talking won't. But they're like very, very deep etiquette and like how it's structured and like very formal. So there's just a lot of cool things like that where I've definitely wound a couple conversations, just re-listen to them. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then like later you hear something brought up and it like flashes back to that conversation. You're like, oh, so it was almost like a foreshadowing
Yeah.
to something that she actually was end up having to deal with. But because she had this conversation, she's more prepped for it now. And like, it's like moral things and stuff that she has to think about. So that was pretty cool. Then the novella, during the books, how they're structured is usually parts, like 3 parts or 4 parts, and then each part has chapters. And between the parts, he'll have he calls interludes, and they're like a short 1 chapter about a side character.
Cool.
So like he'll like have a section, and then he'll be like interludes, and he'll list off 3 characters that you may not have even been introduced to yet, and then it's a quick chapter about them, and a quick chapter about them, and such and such. Why don't you talk a little bit more about something? I do need to take this phone call,
Go ahead.
and then we'll be back.
Yeah. Well, here I am. One of the things that Zane and I are going to get into momentarily here, once he's able to assess his situation, is The 12 Rules for Life by Jordan B. Peterson. It's another book that Zane and I have been reading together collectively, chapter by chapter. And we have over time made it through more than several of the 12 rules for life, An Antidote to Chaos by this clinical psychologist. Rule 1 was stand up straight with your shoulders back, which was mainly about exerting self-confidence in a healthy way. Rule 2 was treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping, which was acknowledging that we ourselves have inherent worth. We are worth something, and a lot of times we're aware of our own negativity more so than someone who doesn't know us. And so knowing of that, we treat ourselves with less dignity or don't go out of our way to help ourselves as much as we would someone else that we love, and to treat ourselves as such, like someone we are responsible for helping. Rule 3 was make friends with people who want the best for you. It's kind of self-explanatory, but the people you surround yourself with are the people you are most likely to be like or succumb to, or just make friends with people who want the best for you. Rule 4, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. You know, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, to who you used to be. Are you making progress from who you used to be? That should be your main concern, not who someone else is today. That's not what we're trying to do. Rule 5 was do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Zane and I had a wonderful discussion about what that might mean outside of, or for someone who doesn't have kids. I, having 2 daughters of my own, was able to provide a certain perspective that he was unable to provide, and he was able to provide one in which I couldn't. But the rule being do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them is punish your children or the world will. Rule 6 is set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. If you live in a shit box, if your life feels like a shit box, if your mentality is that your life is a shit box, then your life might be and continue to be a shit box. Whereas if you wake up and you work on what you have the ability to control and move forward in your own life in a fashion with direction and purpose, your world will start to have direction and purpose. Rule 7 is pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. It went into the history and philosophy behind how we became a species capable of making our actions that might better our future, and to take moments where I don't know what Zane's doing over here, but I can hear him so vividly in the side. He's having like a full blown argument with a telemarketer or something. It's very distracting. Hopefully it doesn't pick up in the mic. So excuse me. But it is basically that, pursue what is meaningful to you, and what is meaningful to you might take more time than something that is expedient, instant gratification. But it is the difference between our instant gratifications and our pursual, and being pursuant of something that might be more meaningful to us, that is going to be better and more beneficial. Rule 8, which is the rule that he and I will discuss upon his return, is tell the truth, or at least don't lie. It is very, very important rule. And while I'm trying to bide myself slightly more time until he walks back over here, it's on page 203, and it's broken up into several little seconds, like Truth in No Man's Land, where he talks about training to become a clinical psychologist at McGill University in Montreal. And while doing so, he sometimes met classmates on the grounds of the Douglas Hospital, where we had our first direct experiences with the mentally ill, and how they would sometimes ask him, when he would come in, when he visited on the grounds, all but the most seriously afflicted residents had been discharged. So those who remained were strange, much damaged people. They clustered around the vending machines, scattered throughout the hospital's tunnels. They looked as if they had been photographed by Diane Orbis or painted by Hieronymus Bosch, which is mildly superfluous wording there. But one day my classmates and I were all standing in line. We were awaiting further instructions from the straight-laced German psychologist who ran the Douglas Clinical Training Program. A long-term, impatient, fragile, vulnerable approached one of the other students, a sheltered, conservative young woman. The patient spoke to her in a friendly, childlike manner and asked, "Why are you all standing here? What are you doing? Can I come along with you?" My classmate turned to me and asked uncertainly, what should I say to her? She was taken aback, just as I was, by this request coming from someone so isolated and hurt. Neither of us wanted to say anything that might be construed as a rejection or a reprimand. We had temporarily entered a kind of no man's land in which society offers no ground rules or guidance. We were new clinical students, unprepared to be confronted on the grounds of a mental hospital by a schizophrenic patient asking a naive, friendly question about the possibility of social belonging. The natural conversational give and take between people attentive to contextual clues and cues was not happening here either. What exactly were the rules in such a situation, far outside the boundaries of normal social interaction? What exactly were the options? And he talks about how deciding to just be upfront about the situation rather than lie might be the better answer, just to keep it very simple. He said, I told the patient as simply and directly as I could that we were new students training to be psychologists and that she couldn't join us for that reason. The answer highlighted the distinction between her situation and ours, making the gap between us greater and more evident. The answer was harsher than a well-crafted white lie, but I already had an inkling that untruth, however well meant, can produce unintended consequences. She looked crestfallen and hurt, but only for a moment. Then she understood, and it was all right. That was just how it was. He goes into way more detail about how this can work. He goes, this next section is called My Landlord, and then the next one is called Manipulate the World. And it talks about how what we talk and what we speak into existence, the word is God. God was the word in the beginning. Let there be light, right? We speak from an idea. We can conceptualize and give direction and purpose to something. And without having intent and without having direction, without speaking with purpose, you can't start to actually attempt to even dictate a course. And so if what you're speaking is just falsity and negativity, then a lot of times that is what you are believing for yourself. And it just leads you into a deeper and deeper lie. And then even your lies become things. And so I had highlighted so many different parts. Welcome back.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay?
Little side thing. It was just the bank. You know, I've talked about it a little bit on the podcast, trying to get a mortgage loan and stuff. Been trying to get a hold of that guy for weeks. He just called me, so I couldn't really miss that phone call. So I had to just kind of discuss mortgage stuff like that. So do apologize for the abrupt hopping up and dipping out.
Good. I was just discussing our rule. I went over the other ones. We're at Rule 8, tell the truth or at least don't lie. Obviously about just doing your best to speak truth into your existence so that you don't follow and get lost in a path of lies. And there's certain things I highlighted here and there, like taking the easy way out or telling the truth. Those are not merely two different choices. Okay? Taking the easy way out or telling the truth. Those are not merely two different choices. They are different pathways through life. They are utterly different ways of existing. That is a statement.
Yep.
He really does make good arguments for things. You even said upon reading this together, you were like, you might not agree with everything.
Yeah, no, you're never going to always agree with every bit of it, but he at least like explains things from his point of view in a way where you're like, I can see where he's coming from.
He always takes the religious aspects to it too. For what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? That's Mark 8:36.
It's the idea of if you
quote.
become wealthy, but at what cost? Like, yeah, you're wealthy, but are you happy? Are you a genuine person? Did you do bad things along the way to get to that point? Like things like that.
Do you live your whole life in regret and remorse and pain? And the capacity of the rational mind to deceive, manipulate, scheme, trick, falsify, minimize, mislead, betray, prevaricate, deny, omit, rationalize, bias, exaggerate, and obscure is so endless, so remarkable that centuries of pre-scientific thought concentrating on clarifying the nature of moral endeavor regarded it as positively demonic. This is not because of rationality itself as a process. That process can produce clarity and progress. It is because rationality is subject to the single worst temptation, to raise what it knows now to the status of an absolute. Taking what you know and saying, this is it. This is all there is. This is what I know.
Have you already
There's no
read
need
these
to learn
while I was
more.
out?
Read what?
These points while I was out?
No.
Okay. Just want to make sure we weren't double reading. Like
No, we have not.
But yeah, no, I mean that's a thing a lot of people fall into is where you I mean it's especially now with social media
Yeah.
where people hear something and they just go, that's fact.
Mm-hmm.
Without having explored any other information.
They just assume
done
it's true.
actual research. Somebody that has a slight following goes, such and such is true. They're like, well, fucking that's true. They just say, someone come out and be like, Nick actually beat up 4 homeless guys in Medina, and they're like, fuck, it's facts. It's on the internet.
It could be, and I've been guilty of doing it before too. It could be like the thing with TikTok where someone tells me, China owns TikTok. You don't really want to put anything on the platform because the moment you do this or that, and then I just start repeating that to somebody, and I say that, and then it just becomes this thing where it's like, and then someone enlightens me slightly more, and I don't want to hear it. No, someone already told me it's bad news.
Or the even more relevant thing, because you just talked about it, is everybody, like a lot of people say, like how you said, you Google psilocybin, and it's like it's bad for you, and it's an illegal substance, and then he could just be like, that's true, it's the facts, it's fucking garbage. But he's like, I'm going to research some shit from my own information. And he's not just like one book. He's got like 10 books on it.
Yeah. And
so
then have you noticed how some of those books are like MDMA, psilocybin, ayahuasca, LSD. And I'm like, look, I'm not going, all these things are going to help me. I'm picking, I am doing my research
on one
and I am
topic.
looking for one specific thing. Is this legitimately what it, and I want to, and I'm not just falling into any
that's the thing where
he's
he's not just taking like that little statement there said. He's not just taking what he knows and being like, well, that's it. There's nothing else to know about it.
I want to know more.
Yeah.
I'm being open to that concept and I'm not lying to myself and by stating that what I know is an absolute. There's always more. Which goes really probably into his next rules. You remember? You know what I'm going with that?
I mean, a lot of his shit kind of goes with that's why it's all rules of life. They all go hand in hand to a point.
He gets to talking about Milton, and he wrote Paradise Lost, which there's a movie that's loosely based off of Paradise Lost. And it's actually involves the war. What war? Look up real quick. What movie is based off of Paradise? Apocalypse Now. Apocalypse Now is loosely based off of Milton's book, Paradise Lost. Lucifer, in Milton's eyes, the spirit of reason, was the most wondrous angel brought forth from the void of God. This can be read psychologically. Reason is something alive. It lives in all of us. It's older than any of us. It's best understood as a personality, not a faculty. It has its aims and its temptations and its weaknesses. It flies higher and sees farther than any other spirit. But reason falls in love with itself. And worse, it falls in love with its own productions. It elevates them and worships them as absolutes. Lucifer is, therefore, the spirit of I can barely say this word, totalitarianism. He is flung from heaven into hell because such elevation, such rebellion against the highest and incomprehensible inevitably produces hell. It's a fucking metaphor. It's a fucking metaphor. It's a fucking metaphor. Or. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I really did like this chapter. The truth instead goes on. There was only one other part or two that I put in here. It is first, a little lie. Then, several little lies to prop it up. After that, distorted thinking to avoid the shame that those lies produce. Then, a few more lies to cover up the consequences of the distorted thinking. Then, most terribly, the transformation of those now necessary lies through practice into automatized, specialized, structural, neurologically instantiated unconscious belief and action. Then, the sickening of experience itself as action, predictated on falsehood, fails to produce the results intended. If you don't believe in brick walls, you will still be injured when you run headlong into one. Then you will curse reality itself for producing the wall. After that comes the arrogance and sense of superiority that inevitably accompanies the production of successful lies, hypothetically successful lies. And that is one of the greatest dangers. Apparently, everyone is fooled, so everyone is stupid except me. Everyone is stupid and fooled by me, so I can get away with whatever I want. Finally, there is the proposition. Being itself is susceptible to my manipulation. Thus, it deserves no respect. And that's things falling apart. Hell comes later. Hell comes when lies have destroyed the relationship between individual or state and reality itself. Things fall apart. Life degenerates. Everything becomes frustration and disappointment. Hope consistently betrays. The deceitful individual desperately gestures at sacrifice like Cain, but fails to please. Then the drama enters its final act. Tortured by constant failure, the individual becomes bitter. Disappointment and failure amalgamate and produce a fantasy. The world is bent on my personal suffering, my particular undoing, my destruction. I deserve, I must have my revenge. So that's the gateway to hell.
I think the last rule where we talked about the Columbine shooters and people like that, where they get such a twisted chain of thought and they're convinced from years of twisted lies and things like that, where now their way of thinking is the only truth, and because nothing goes that way, that they themselves are being purposely attacked and they have to fix it.
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
So like I said, these chapters do go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Hand in hand.
That's when the underworld, a terrifying and unfamiliar place, becomes misery itself.
Yep. So like you said, the truth thing is a lot of shit, and it's deep shit.
Yeah. At the beginning of time, according to the great Western tradition, the word of God transformed chaos into being through the act of speech. It is axiomatic within the tradition that man and woman alike are made in the image of God. So when they say we're made in God's image, right? Listen to this. It says at the beginning of time, according to the beginning of time, the word of God transformed chaos into being through the act of speech. It took an actual thought, an effort from God, right?
Made it
to go, hey, I'm going to transform chaos into being. I'm going to say, let there be light through speech. In the beginning, God was the Word, and the Word was God, right? Speaks it into existence. So, according to great Western tradition, this is a fact. According to great Western tradition, the Word of God transformed chaos into being through the act of speech. It is axiomatic within that tradition that man and woman alike are made in the image of God. We ourselves have the ability then to transform chaos into being through speech.
By spreading falsehoods.
Or lack thereof. Or speaking truth.
Yeah, I mean, same thing, but you're
right.
finding the
Yes.
order in the chaos and saying, like, it's kind of like how you talk about, like, the chaos theory. It's like there might just be with seemingly random thoughts and ideas. If enough people are speaking them, they will form a singular idea, singular thought, and become anything that's in this range has to be true. Which is where I think a lot of, like, politics falls apart, is with the, like, multiple party system, is because then people get so stuck on what
slandering, slandering.
They get so stuck on what party they are that if anybody has an idea that isn't based on their already pre-existing, like, guidelines,
they're not open to it.
They're just like, well, that's because you're a dumb Democrat or you're just a dumb Republican.
Doesn't fall within my realm.
Where instead of being like, well, maybe they have different insight, and they might be somewhat correct.
Doesn't fall within my realm. I'm not going to be open to it.
Yep. So it's
if your life is not what it could be, try telling the truth. If you cling desperately to an ideology or wallow in nihilism, try telling the truth. If you feel weak and rejected and desperate and confused, try telling the truth. In paradise, everyone speaks the truth. That is what makes it paradise. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie.
Yep. If you don't understand something, then just say you don't understand it. I know so many people that like someone will ask them a question and they don't know it, but they just say some bullshit so they don't sound like they don't know it, even though what they say is completely fucking.
I have gotten into the habit of going, you know what? I don't feel comfortable enough speaking on that subject. I guess I just don't feel educated enough. That's what I said. I even said that to my dad. He started to talk to me about politics the other day. And I was like, you know what? I just don't think I'm educated enough for this. Like, I can't speak on it because I don't watch it. I haven't watched the news in years. I don't know the updates. I don't, so it's like to speak on something like this wouldn't. So I was like, I'm not shooting you down. It's not that I'm not going to be receptive of it. You know, I'm definitely not shooting down your ideas, but I can't speak on it enough. And then if he said something that like,
I can't rebuttal anything because I have no knowledge.
But when he did say something that I felt like I could comment on, I would still speak my own piece, but I wouldn't falsify how I felt about it.
Yeah.
So I always stayed true to how I felt, you know, and because of so, it did not once turn into an argument. It remained an active discussion because I admittedly said, you know what, I'm not educated enough to speak on this, rather than just go, what I know is the truth, and no, and then that's when we start with butting, right? That's when we would butt heads. So.
Absolutely.
It was cool. It was cool.
But hell yeah. So another rule down. It's been a couple, almost months probably. Since
That's
we
how
talked
I am
about
with
one.
you, though, because when you start talking about your butt plugs and stuff, and I'm like, Zane, I just don't know enough about this subject.
We don't talk about those.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Fuck.
Sorry, dude.
But no, I mean, it's another new rule down. We kind of took a hiatus from those while we did the Harry Potter shenanigans. But now we're back on that for a little bit. We got my, my series is going. Like I said, just a lot of character development stuff happening in those stories. I'm partway through the third book now, the third main book.
Did you like the second book more than the first?
It's hard to say more because they're the same story. It's just an extension.
Like, that's how. Remember, we were doing this with the Harry Potter thing too, and we were like, "It's so hard."
I think you're
it's
not
different
far because
enough
Harry
yet.
Potter, it's one big story, but there's so many. There's small stories happening, like Goblet of Fire was like it's technically in the Harry Potter's life.
Yeah, but I mean,
that
still
was
the
more,
second book. You would say that you wouldn't say the second book had a specific quest.
Yeah, because the whole second book, it's like there is a overarching thing, but there's like the first book was the Chamber of Secrets.
No, but I'm saying you're
mine.
They don't have specific quests in book two.
Not like it's all working towards this final thing. Like there's small things that happen, but it's not like the whole book was this thing.
But even
like
when I'm reading the Dark Tower series, right, I
things.
can pick out which of those Dark Tower books I liked the most. I remember I fucking loved the drawing of the three.
Yeah, I mean at this point,
At first
can't say I like
the
two
way
better than
Gunslinger
one
was written,
at this point.
but like,
yeah, I also can't say I like two better than one at this point. Three is going well. I think they've all added the same amount so far to it, and it's just I think
you really like it though. So
I love
You're
it.
really into it.
I
It's
I
worth
don't think
keep
one
listening to
has
thousands of pages,
provided more to the story than the other.
Okay.
And instead, like there is like things happening.
What would be
but
the age
it's
group
all-
for it if you had to like a target age group that they were to try to maybe? Is there any
I'd say
real?
probably. I mean, late teens. And then
Is there
20s.
a lot of heavy stuff?
Yeah,
in there
this
that you
wouldn't be
can't-
like you're not gonna have like a 12-year-old reading this and really wanting to like enjoy it.
Okay.
This is definitely like an adult fantasy series.
Mm-hmm.
Not to the aspect of like, oh, there's sex and shit, but it's like it's still an adult thing because there's so much deep thinking involved with it that like
Okay.
I think anyone who's like, even like most teenagers are probably going to have a hard time being able to focus enough on it to enjoy it properly.
Okay, because of the elements and so
The
much
deep thinking and
elaborate.
stuff. It's not a quick developing story. Like so, there are thousands of pages and like the story is just progressing. Like in the amount of pages that they've like this story has had compared to like that same amount of pages throughout like Harry Potter. Harry Potter's gone through like fucking 5 years
and
of
the
his
reason
life.
the reason I ask him that question too is like, one, I didn't know, but two, it's like I would like to distinguish the fact that this is not, when we talk fantasy, this is not Harry Potter fantasy. Even
It's
as
the
dark
same.
as the elements as that are.
It's still considered fantasy, but it's not as trivial of fantasy is how I'd put it. Because Harry Potter, it's great, but it is still like
It's written.
it's more simply written.
There's a reason the characters in it are the ages that they are,
Yeah.
right? Because it's meant for
but it's
to
also
be read
like
and conceptualized.
it's not as
by.
dense. This is a very dense fantasy. It's the same idea of like if you liked Dune, it's a very dense fantasy world. Game of Thrones, very dense fantasy where there's a lot of information, a lot of subtle things, conversations, political moves. Where Harry Potter is storyline and action. Mm-hmm. Like there's not a lot of downtime in Harry Potter.
There's some profound things that can be said from time to time.
Any story is going to have if a good story in any form is going to have some sort of profound thing you can learn from it. But Harry Potter is there's less downtime for conversation stuff and as there is to make sure. Listen here, motherfucking camera.
I think it just did another picture.
It did. It's just they try to keep the attention because they know that their audience is younger for the most part. At least when it came out. Now it's like a cult following thing. So us adults are now the ones. But when it was written, it was meant for young teens to be able to enjoy it and still be attached to it. Where like this is less like that. This is dense. Like this is, you have to be sitting down, putting the effort into paying attention to it properly. And I love those kind. That it makes my brain work. It puts my thought into it. But I think that's why it's a lot harder than like I said, Harry Potter. We're picking like certain segments, like certain books stand out more because even though there's like small things that happen to him, each thing leads to the next. Where like Harry's, each event almost felt like its own thing that had like a small piece that went to the big story. But like the rest of that book, wasn't really a
it's
big
not
part
to
of
say
it.
that it's a remedial read, Harry Potter.
Like,
it's just that it is designed to be
I'm just saying
accessible and understood by an audience.
But I'm saying like book wise, like you can pick
much younger.
Said picking out a certain book is a little easier because like book 1, 2, and 4, I would say, as far as what they add to the overall story, isn't as much as like 3 and then 5 on.
No,
because those are more broad story where like 1 is about the fucking stone and like their friendship forming.
Yeah.
2 is the Chamber of Secrets and then it gets connected to Voldemort at the end. 4 is the fucking games and then connected to Voldemort at the end. You could have had a different way to get attached to Voldemort without the games, and so much of it is just on the games.
I'm sure I could take your book, and if I knew enough about it, I could segment it as well. But when we talk about where it's designed for, it's not necessarily story structure, Zane. It's about like, it's not even diction and rhetoric. It's subject matter. It's topics that would someone who's 16, 17 years old even be able to comprehend? Is it something they've experienced yet? I mean, what's their, how worldly is a child at 15 or 16 unless they grew up in a family that's, so it's like to a certain degree, there is subject matter beyond something that would even be like relatively appropriate
I'm just
there's ideas
way
that
I'm
are
trying to
harder
explain
conceptualize
is
beyond someone who's got
there hasn't been a part in the book where I feel like you could take this part out and the story still makes sense. Every part he's put in has had to be there. Because like,
would you say there's more dialogue or more description? Would you say I'm reading when he's talking about the planes?
I think it's an equal
describing the motherfucking flowers and the beds and all this, or is it like a heavy dialogue? So much talking.
I think it's
so much
pretty evenly split.
Yeah,
because like even like they'll have a conversation and then it'll go into the character's thoughts during the conversation.
Nice.
So it's like the conversation's happening and then you have her inner dialogue with herself.
That's fun.
Where she's describing how she's reacting to the conversation. Then it'll go back into the conversation some more.
And you said it goes back and forth too, and it shoots between past, present, future.
Past, present, and future. Some not so much future,
but past gets shot too.
It'll be a character, and then a chapter might be that character flashing back 6 years, and you're getting some backstory on the character. Okay. And then it comes back to the character, and then like a couple chapters later, it'll flash back to 5 years ago, and it like slowly catches you up on their background. And then you understand some things they were doing earlier in the book. Nice. But like if they didn't do that, things they're doing earlier in the book wouldn't make sense. Yeah. But then like they slowly give you the information as you go through it, which is why like those flashbacks that have to be in there, else all of a sudden these things.
What was the name of the second book called?
The Words of Radiance.
Words of Radiance.
Yep, there it was. The Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, and then I think this one is. Oh fuck! I think it's Rhythm of War. Or that's the fourth book. Why can I think? Oathbringer. Sorry, third book is Oathbringer. Fourth book is Rhythm of War, and then the fifth one is Wind and Truth, but it hasn't been released yet. The fifth big book, and then the novellas was Edge Dancer, and then Dawnbringer is the next novella. But they're great, and I said I have the physical copies ordered. We were hoping they would get here before the podcast, but they didn't get here today. Have them for next week.
Nice.
But
Then we'll be able to really see them.
A little bit of a longer episode, mostly because I had to dip out for 10 minutes and make him do some shit on his own.
Hey, it's all good. We're still here.
But love you, appreciate you. Thank you guys. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Comment down below. Check out the other channel.
Definitely click those like buttons. Click the subscribe. If you don't have an account, it's super easy to set up an account. You just attach it to your Gmail. No one's gonna send you spam shit. No one's gonna try to butt fuck you in your sleep.
Only thing you might get is if you hit the bell icon, you'll get notified that we posted.
You'll get a notification.
We have a second channel
say,
down
hey,
in
they
the
got a new
description
show.
below. We put some new content out on that recently as well.
Go look at it. Who wants to be a millionaire?
Yeah, we just both one. We play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. We
Star
showed how
Wars
little we know.
fucked us up.
Fuck Star Wars. We don't know enough about that shit.
Star Wars trivia ruined my day.
It ruined a lot of shit. But yeah.
If you could say
so much.
hello to your mother for me, though.
And tell somebody you love them. We fucking appreciate you. Bye.
Goodbye. Hey, house on fire.